And welcome to another episode of the Winning with Insights podcast. My name is Mike. I am the founder of GTM Diagnostics. Today, I have a very special guest. His name is Laurens. He is the founder of GTM Engineer, not to be mistaken with GTM Diagnostics. At GTM Engineer, he is specialized in automation and AI for basically everything go to market. Laurens, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, Laurens, before we get started, could you quickly or take your time actually introduce yourself to the people that are
Yeah. My name is Lawrence. Started go-to-market engineer 2-3 weeks ago. I started on a site way before it, but like officially launched 2-3 weeks ago. Quick backstory. I started in software sales, went into recruitment from there, helping software companies scale their go-to-market teams. Eventually started my own recruitment firm. And we were very picky in who we worked with. And part of it was asking what they had, like what software tools are using, what automation and all that stuff. And working with startups, we very often got the question of like, I don't know, what should we be using? So from there, it kind of evolved in me taking on projects on the side, helping them, set up go-to-market motions / automations. Started posting a lot about on LinkedIn about like what we were doing, what we were building, because like I'm sort of a tech nerd and I love automation. So I just started posting about them. And then, along the months of posting about it, taking out side projects, I started to get more and more inbound of people just asking me like, hey, I saw this, I heard this, like, can you help me set this up? And since I love doing it, like eventually I just took the jump and now I'm a full-time go-to-market engineer and I just build cool stuff and cool workflows for software companies, basically.
awesome. Yes, I think the entire like automation space for go to market is very, very broad. There are many different use cases. But if we look at like the main problem that you are actually solving for your customers, like what would that be?
Yeah, I think for me, that's go-to-market efficiency. Um, there's been a lot of talk about on my feed, at least on LinkedIn, about go-to-market efficiency and its effect on evaluation. But also just like pre-COVID, it was very easy to get money and very easy to get funding. So you didn't really have to be very efficient because, you had funding, you had money, you didn't have to be very profitable. You could just rely on funding, rely on VC and all that stuff. And I think lately we've been, seeing the transition in software companies starting to, become more mindful of, is this sustainable? Is this efficient? Like, can we grow this sustainably without having to go back to our VC and ask for more money? Like, is this motion in itself profitable? And that's the main problem I attack. I basically look at the go-to-market and see how we can make it more efficient using software, using AI, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is something that's very current, like the efficiency problem, if you want to state it like this. And there are like many things that would go into becoming more efficient. So what would you say are some of the most common causes, besides like just trying to spend a lot of money,
Hmm.
when it comes to like actually looking into what goes into the efficiency? So for example, when I think about efficiency, I look at like volume versus, for example, quality. Or when I look at efficiency, like how many tools do we need to buy to actually get done what we are supposed to do? So what would you say goes into this?
Yeah. A lot. Like, I used to have a recruitment agency, and something you saw a lot was just hire. It's like, oh, we need more sales. We need more leads in order to get more sales. So just hire more SDRs, and we solve the problem. Which creates a lot of bloat very fast. Because it's not always the smartest thing. Like, maybe you can just optimize, right? Like, make the movement you already have more efficient. Like, maybe use some tools to like increase the throughput in your system. So I mean, a lot of things. I think the recently with the with the added tools like Clay and all that stuff, it's become very very easy to add a lot of scale to outbound for like to pick a motion specifically, um, which makes for a lot of noise out there as well, and a lot of gurus talking about the death of outbound. I don't think it's that, by the way. I think it's just like you need to up your game to win at it. Um, so, I mean, with the added noise makes it harder to, get through. So you need to be the outbound you send or the cold calls you do need to be of higher quality, which software can help with. Um, Uploads, I mean, yeah, volume versus quality, all of those basically.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one thing you mentioned with like blow. There was like the higher, higher, higher. Just hire more people, and then because they all have the same target, like, hey, if we have more people going towards the same target, we're gonna achieve more. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And then bloat can also, of course, also come with like the investment in different types of tools
Hmm.
and systems to support all the people that are working. So these systems, like what have been like some of the things that you've seen in the past couple of years that have really pushed bloat in the go-to-market function besides hiring more people?
Um, I mean, I think it depends on like, but like an example of it is like a lot of tools kind of have their own way of looking at go to market. So they have like their own kind of methodology they're pushing themselves. So a lot of companies just like buy a lot of different tools and then they just end up having a lot of, you know, different, I mean, the same go to market motion, but operated in different ways, which makes it like very hard to scale. Um, and like as a side note to this, I mainly work with startups, so this might be more the case with startups than with enterprises because they'll. I mean, I'm assuming they'll most of the times have a better system setup. Um, but yeah, a lot of startups. Going back to the hiring a little bit because I think it's hard to separate them fully from each other. But if you're a startup, like a lot of startups don't really have great onboarding. They don't really have a set in place system. And then a lot of more senior hires, they just kind of get to choose their own tools. And they're like, oh, I use the Apollo. And it's like, I don't know, it's I think 99 a month to use Apollo. So they're like, oh, fine, if you use Apollo, like get Apollo. And then somebody else uses something different. And then you get a very, um, how do you say it, like a lot of different kind of methods with all different tools in one motion all working together, which like very easily creates chaos and it's not really working together and it's just very very bloated basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny that you mentioned it because like I have experienced the same. Um, and I've never really thought about the angle of like the methodology and the difference in how you would operate with a specific system that you incorporate. So that is actually quite interesting. So if you want to actually start with what it is that you do, so like helping with efficiently scale your go-to-market efforts, like what are some of the things that you need to have in place before you can actually start, well, scaling basically?
Yeah. I mean, you need to have something to scale basically, like a very short answer. But like I mean, I've been on calls and like one of the like basic workflows you set up is we have a total addressable market. We filter out our like ICP, which is like the our best clients possible. And then it's like find the right buyer, find like signals and all that stuff. Um, but just having the ICP already is like you need to have a defined ICP to like build out that motion. Like that's kind of in part of like if you're scaling outbound, you kind of need to know who you are selling to. That's true for like filtering them out, for messaging, for all that stuff. So I mean, you do need you need an ICP for one, and you kind of also need to. I mean, depends, right? You can work through it and get there. But if you start automating something at least make sure it works before you automate it. Like, don't just be like, oh, this would be cool to automate, and you've never done it manually before, so you have no clue if it works, and then spend a week, 2 weeks, or maybe longer, depending on what it is specifically, automating it to just find out it like doesn't actually work.
That's already like a very good learning. Like make sure that you've went through the motion, that you understand what is working and what isn't before you're actually trying to add skill to something.
Yeah.
And like it's like not just your ICP, not just your personas, but also perhaps in like your messaging, way that you position yourself. Is this something that you would help with, or would you say like, no, this is like not part of what I do. Like I just help you scale your systems.
Yeah. So a two-part answer. I've basically, I'm still building out the offer like in more specifics, but so far what I've set up, or like the idea in essence, is like on the one side I have the, okay, you know what, like you have this motion, you're already doing manual, and you're just like, hey, we know we can like add AI and automate this, but we don't know how. Can you do it? And then it's very easy. It's just like, okay, let's just
Yeah.
automate it. Let's just do it. And then the other one is like, we know we have our go-to markets. We aren't really using AI. We have like a different, like we have a tool stack, but it's like from like our sales manager from 5 years ago. I think we can optimize this. And then it's like, okay, let's look at your go-to-market motion. Like, let's see what's going on. Let's kind of, get in the bow tie, and like, let's see what the conversions are. Let's kind of benchmark those, and then see where the low-hanging fruit is, and then just go from there.
Yeah. So I think that's a very interesting approach because most of the businesses that actually have the means to start investing in scaling, they are probably a little bit further ahead. So they might have already have some processes in place. And then to make sure that you're able to like optimize what they have, we're starting out with the bow tie. I think that's very interesting. Maybe for the people that don't know, you can explain a little bit more what the bow tie is and what you are specifically looking at.
Yeah. I mean, the bow tie in essence, so you have the sales funnel, which is like, I think everybody knows kind of the sales funnel of like, what is it? I know awareness selection. What's the one in the middle? Yeah,
Education.
awareness, education, selection, and then like prioritization in between them. But it's like the sales funnel everybody knows. And the bow tie basically just adds in a second funnel for the, recurring revenue, basically, for the onboarding, the expansion and the retention. So that's the bow tie. In essence, it's just a way to map out your go-to-market and like kind of make it visual. Because I mean, if you're running a software company, you're already doing all those things. You're like, you do have the sales side, you have the customer support side, and now let's make it visual and look at the volume metrics and look at the conversion between those. And then from there, like if it's, I mean, because like a hard part in part, it's just hard to get the right data, because a lot of companies, they aren't really tracking everything very well. Maybe they're using some Excel sheets to do their outbounds and all this stuff. Um, but like the first task is, let's look at the data and actually see what's happening before we start like changing stuff. Because our win rate might be phenomenal, in which case it's just like, let's add at top of the funnel. But it might very well be the opposite of the case, in which case it's like, we get so many leads, but only like 1% of them actually sign up. Then it's like, well, are you prioritizing the right ones? Or are we just really bad at sales? What's going on? So I think it's like, it's key to actually know what's going on before you start just automating stuff and just throwing something.
Uh, It's funny. Like we also use the bow tie data model to see where certain bottlenecks are. And like you said, there are many different ways in which you can look at it. Like there's like the general bow tie, which is basically you put everything in there and you look at what's happening. You can even start segmenting based on
Yeah, different
different
motions.
customer
Yeah.
segments that you have, different motions, different use cases, geographies, industries, product lines. sales teams, salespeople, etc. And then you can probably spot some trends when you're looking at that data. And, and where do you see like most of the, or what's like the most, how do you say that, like prevalency, like the most common place for a bottleneck to exist in the bow tie model?
Um,
From your experience, of course.
I mean, I guess it depends. I know you have this saying of the bottleneck is usually at the top of the bottle, and it's true in many cases, but then again, it's not always right. Nothing is like black and white. There's always like exceptions. Um, but I mean, right now, it's true a lot of times that it's just like outbound, because a lot of software companies they use outbound. Like, I mean, most of them are doing outbound to get customers, which is getting more and more noisy. So it's true that like so usually at the top of the bottle, but it doesn't mean it's always true. Like you can very well be just like maybe you have like an inbound motion and your marketing is great, but it's just all top of the funnel and it's very broad and you get in tons of leads, but like not very good leads. Then it's like it's not top of the funnel. That's the problem. It's like either you're not prioritizing. I mean, if that's the case, or maybe your sales team isn't closing well enough or whatever. But yeah, top of the funnel is the main one, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, it's becoming more and more difficult to get like high quality leads in. It doesn't matter if it's like inbound or outbound or whether motion you're using. Every company wants more
More leads.
more leads, more better leads.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you're using the Bowtie model to assess the current state. And then I can imagine, being a GTM engineer, you're also taking a look at the tech stack.
Yes.
And you mentioned briefly that some of them still use Excel. What are some of the like some of the systems that you like working with, and in what way have you seen them being used in like the best and the worst case, basically?
Yeah. I mean, I love Clay for one. I mean, Cargo is like a close second to it. I think it's the main competitor of Clay. But usually it's just like 'cause the tech stack gets overcomplicated like so often. Like every time I'm scrolling LinkedIn, I'm like I see different posts about like we use
The
25
ultimate
tools
tech
and
stack.
like
Yeah.
in all different ways. And I think in essence, all you really need is like one tool to build the actual list, which can be, it can be Apollo, it can be Sales Navigator, or whatever. Then you export it to a tool that actually does the bulk of the actual work, does the research, like find the right contact and all that stuff. And I like Clay for it. You can do it with Cargo. I think Trigify is another one. You have a few options, and then you need like in two directions. You need like a CRM, or like basically that's where all your records go, like where like the single source of truth basically. And then you also need like an outbound tool, depending on the motion though. If it's like enterprise and it's very like dedicated touch motion, then it's like you don't really need an outbound tool. You can just do it manually, or like double check the messaging or whatever and send the email yourself. But usually just like get a list builder, get some tool to actually, to do research and all the stuff, and then get an outbound tool and make sure everything is a CRM so you can sync every tool with the CRM and like don't be doing outreach to current customers and all this stuff.
That's like very good.
Yeah, yeah.
So okay, so just to, because this is already like proper advice that you're giving. So it starts like in the foundation, have like a proper system of records,
Yeah,
which is basically probably your CRM. This is your single source of truth. This is where you're going to store all the information.
yeah,
Then there's like a system of engagement, if you want to call it like this. So this could be in your CRM if you do like a dedicated touch, which is basically you're not doing a lot of outbound stuff per seller.
yeah.
Could be that you have like a very big sales team, so you still do a lot. But for each person in the sales team, they don't do a lot of
Lower
single
volume per
activities.
rep, or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly. But it could also be that you use something like Apollo or Outreach or Salesloft or whatever else is out there. I believe even HubSpot now has like the prospecting prospector
Yeah.
built in.
I know HubSpot by the way, but
Um,
I'm not the biggest fan of the like I tried the HubSpot one, but it's like somewhat slow in its like evolution. Like an example of
yeah,
this, like Google recently started notifying like if you had because the way open tracking works is it like places a small image
yeah,
and then it shows the pixel. And if it loads like, oh, it's been opened, and Google has been recently flagging those emails as like, hey, there's an image you can't see. Is this spam? And Apollo like isn't Apollo, sorry, HubSpot. Um, like the other tools very fastly like we're like, okay, let's like stop
yeah.
tracking it this way. And like, HubSpot has been, I don't know if they did it eventually, but like, I know it took a while for them to
I,
actually
I,
press
be-
it.
I believe that you cannot turn it off, and they have like a warning that if you turn it on, that like this could be flagged as spam. Yeah. So, but we have like the system of outreach, basically, like also probably where you do your list building, could be Sales Navigator, etc. And then how I would basically call it is like a system of intelligence. I don't know, I made that up maybe,
Yeah.
but it's like more of like the the way it could be a process. You could do it manually. You could Google search. You could scrape LinkedIn. But you also have other different tools which can automate, like the research
Hmm.
part and make connections between data points. Could be intent signals, could be whatever other like trigger events, like a system of intelligence. And they should all then talk back to your CRM. So that's like the ideal tech stack.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
you like in the end, you can do more, but like in if you're like MVP wise, like minimal viable, if you have like those four, I mean, you're probably set. I maybe would add some sort of like email infrastructure, to just like warm up your email inboxes, like setting up DNS. You can do it manually. But it also depends like on the volume and all that stuff. Because if it's like a dedicated, let's say you're sending like 20, 30 emails a day, it doesn't really matter. Um,
yeah,
so I think maybe from there, it's just all depends on the motion. But if those
yeah.
four are probably going to be in every motion.
I even believe that because I use Apollo, that they warm up your inboxes. That it's like when you start a sequence with like a new domain, it's going to warm it up before it starts like increasing volume.
Yeah.
But don't pin me down on this. I'm not an scale or an automation expert.
Yeah,
So
no, I know they do it.
please.
Instantly, recently added as well. Lemlist as like Lemwarm. So I know like most of them have been adding it
Yeah.
in. But I don't know if all of them did. Anyway, like I know not a lot of them are like trying to be the all-in-one tool. Like Apollo also has like some basic CRM functions,
Yeah.
but I don't know how many people are actually using it as a CRM. Yeah.
I'm not, because for me the system of records is also where my CRM or like my pipeline management lives.
Hmm.
That's me personally. So to recap this, you're looking at like the current state.
Yeah.
We're looking at data, looking at the tech stack, and then once we've identified what they are using and if this fits like the MVP of like the tech stack setup, and you know where the constraints are based on the information that they have, you get to work.
Yes.
So then I'm curious because we've already mentioned like the volume versus quality
Hmm.
piece of this. So what would be your next step to make sure that once you've identified like, hey, this is like a manual process that has been working, we have the current data available so we know where the constraint is of the system. We have like the tech stack that we want to work with. So what would be next?
Yeah. I mean, so it kind of depends on where the bottleneck is. But like in the quality versus volume game, that's usually an outbound game. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but it's like it's talked about a
Can
lot.
also be inbound. Yeah.
Yeah,
Also with like the amount of leads, the type of leads that you get. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So like the real answer is it depends, but like usually like just to go to the outbound because it's like a discussion so often and there's a lot of noise in it.
Yeah.
Um, and there are like a few things, right? Like one thing is like you have personalization and relevance, and I think personalization can also be separated into in just like personalization and then like depersonalization. I'm not sure if that's a term that actually exists, but like basically the difference is personalization is like, hey, I saw you had this job opening and then title. That's
Yeah.
personalization, sure. But like depersonalization is, hey, saw this vacancy and see you're looking for whatever. Like one level deeper. It's like you actually read it. Like it's not just, hey, I saw a vacancy, but like I saw it, I read it, and this is what I think
Mhm.
about it, or like how it like connects with our product or whatever. Which isn't hard to do with AI. Like AI is pretty decent at analyzing texts, and Clay is pretty decent at like getting the text in. So it's just like analyze it from there. And then the second part is relevance. So it used to be you just like get an ICP, and it's usually like location, sector, size, whatever. It's like a few basic attributes. But what AI kind of allows is to go way deeper. It's like, we are software and we integrate very well with HubSpot. You can figure out if they use HubSpot before you reach out, and then segment based on those things. Or like recently worked with a company and they did that was like a tool to manage shared inboxes. But they kind of wanted to know, are they using Google or are they using Outlook for their email? You can also get that info in before you actually reach out. Like you can research DNS and get the MX records, and like you see like, okay, they're using Outlook, they're using Google, and then like you can just get way more like granular in your approach and like really get down to, is it relevant to reach out? And like the next level, but it's like highly dependent on like the solution you sell and the pricing you set up. But something cool you can try to do is like, imagine you sell a certain amount of like seats in your software, which is still like very common.
Mhm.
Is figure out how big the team is, and figure out specifically the team you're looking for is, and then like you can calculate your average contract value of, it's not average contract value, your contract value before actually reaching out to the company, so you can also kind of like, on the one hand, prioritize based on, okay, how relevant is this? Like, do they have the tools we integrate with? Do they have like proxies for certain problems we solve? Which can be like, you solve something for SEO, you can track the loading speed of the website. You can see for certain keywords, like how far down are they scoring on those keywords, like maybe compared to a competitor or whatever. And then you have like, how relevant it is, how much the account is worth before you even reached out. And then you can just segment way better and adjust your messaging. Um, I'm also a big fan of using like micro campaigns while doing it. So creating very small segments and then sending campaigns to them basically with different type of messaging. And then, that's very dependent on the motion, or it's very
Yeah.
dependent on the solution you're running. But basically, like create the smallest subset possible of like these type of users have this type of problem, and we solve it by doing this, and then just create a list that's only targeted to them, and which you can just create one list and then just segment them based on it.
Okay. There's a lot to
Yeah,
unpack here because
that's almost a
um,
small rant or
this
something.
is no, this is very cool because when we're talking about personalization versus relevance, I think a lot of people have came to the understanding that if you're just personalizing with like, hey, first name from company name, I saw that you went to like insert school.
Hmm.
Uh, that's how much fun.
Yeah,
Or I see that you live in insert city. Um, that's not personalization.
it is in
Um,
theory, but like,
yeah, in theory, but
yeah,
still,
it's not though.
um, no. And then you take it to the next level. So it could be that, hey, you're having like a job opening, which is already a little bit step forward. It can also be that like somebody's been on a podcast, or like there's been like a recent like funding announcement or whatever.
Yeah.
That's basically surface level like personalization. And then you can take it to the next step, which is deep personalization, in your words, which is you're taking like the actual content of what it is that you have found, and then you tie it back to like your value proposition.
Yeah.
And then that's when you make personalization relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
like, I think funding announcements is probably personalization a lot of companies use, because like it usually signifies as in they just got money, right? Like let's spend it on
yeah,
me. Um, and it's very common to just be like, "Hey, saw you just received like, congrats on your Series V, and here's my pitch." Instead of doing that, just like read the actual announcements. Like you don't have to do it manually. You can read it with AI. Just like, "Hey, congrats on your Series V. Read that you are focused on whatever, right? But like something that's tied to
X,
your
Y, Z.
product."
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's and then also like the volume versus quality game. When we're talking about quality, you could think about like, hey, how can we increase conversion? Instead of just doing more, we're trying to convert at a higher level. And then this ties them back into like the deep personalization and relevance. And then the relevance, you can then translate into what you call like the micro campaigns, which you're a fan of.
hmm
Can you give like a couple of examples of micro campaigns that you've launched yourself to give everybody like a good understanding of what it is and how you can use it? Because I'm actually quite curious about this one.
um,
I like I like this.
yeah. Um, I mean, in essence, it's just like going very very granular on your. I mean, I separate ICP in like two parts, like ICP and ICS. And ICP is ideal customer profile, as in that's what they have. Like it's like kind of static, as in they use this CRM. That's static. That's like they just have this CRM. They use like whatever integration or whatever, right? And then ICS is ideal customer situation. So they are doing X, um, and basically combining those two to go very very granular. Like ICS is basically they are hiring, they are growing, or their site is loading very very slowly if you're selling SEO solutions. Or like for the shared inbox one, this was for customer success teams. They're losing a lot of customer success recently. Like they've been having, I don't think it's layoff, but like firing or whatever customer success reps. And then you just create sub segments, and you have a different message for each. Like segment one is like they have this like integration, they are growing very fast, and they have also an open vacancy for a customer support rep. We send this message, and then when they are like using this and this app, they don't have they're not hiring, but they have been having layoff recently. We'll send this message, or and then you just create a bunch of combinations and like get very very granular, and basically run micro campaigns instead of like one message to the whole list. You have like very different, and you can even change up like the sequencing of it and all that stuff. Um, you
Mhm.
can, I mean, something you can do, for example, is you get the proxies, right? So you get kind of like, okay, this is a problem we solve. And the question to ask always is just like, if I had an unlimited time to research these leads and figure out if they actually have the problem I solve, what would I be looking for? And then you can just reverse engineer that in Clay. And then from there, kind of lost the thread. Um, but from there, you start targeting, basically.
Okay, so the micro campaigns, to my understanding, based on what you just said, it's instead of looking at just your like ideal customer profile, you're looking at like ideal customer situations, which is basically a combination of different factors that go into how you will approach them. So this, as you mentioned, like this could be like a type of tech stack in combination with hiring trends, with combination with funding, or maybe some legal changes, changes in laws, or I don't know. There could be like many different factors that go into this. But then based on like a combination of this, you're going to set up like certain messaging, which you can then run in like your sequences, your campaigns or micro campaigns, which is basically allowing you to be hyper personalized, hyper deeply personalized and relevant with based on like your value proposition for that specific combination of factors. And I think this is a very good one. Like good the question that you can ask yourself, like if you have an unlimited amount of time when doing research to like a potential customer, like what would you look for?
Mm-hmm.
And then basically translate that back into like how you can set up automation. There is one obstacle that I see in this is that you need to be very well aware
Yeah.
of like things that go into your value proposition. So again, like your ICP firstly needs to be defined. The
Mm-hmm.
use cases, like the entire value proposition needs to be very clear before you can actually run this with success. And I think that again like ties back into like start manual.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because then yeah.
I mean, it's like, I mean, I don't know if that's like too far to say, but I would probably say you should know the problem you're solving better than the companies you're reaching out to, and like in and out. Like you should, because automations get really really good if you can if you can actually do it right. If you can actually be like, okay, if I had an unlimited time to figure out if this lead has the problem I'm solving. If you don't really know your problem very well, that's a very hard task to do. And if you can't do it
Yeah.
manually, you'll like don't try to do it with automations, because
No.
like what are you trying to do then?
Yeah. Uh, yeah, like that's something I cannot dispute.
Yeah,
And
yeah, me neither.
this like it, well, if you need help figuring out what the problems is
Yeah,
that you're solving for your customer, like talk to them. Like
exactly.
that helps a lot.
Yeah,
So then like this is very much like this like for the people that are listening, I can imagine like when you're thinking outbound, yes, of course, 100%. But once they are, for example, a customer, so what would be certain things that you would look for with your existing customer base, for example, to like get upsell opportunities or um, like make sure that you start your retention talks
hmm,
soon enough.
yeah,
Like what would you look for then?
yeah. I mean, obviously, always depends, right? But like, emotion I shared recently is you have different things you do. Like champion tracking is somewhat well known, but in my opinion, it's very one sided. Usually champion tracking is just like, oh, he left and he's now there. Let's also target that company, while forgetting like your like champion just left and somebody else should now be using your product. It's like resell them as well. So that's an example of like track your champions and like get notified as soon as they leave, and get notified like, hey, this champion left, this is new company, and do a nice speed check, and then just whatever, right? If it's dedicated, like
Yeah,
to dedicated outreach, but then at the same time also get a notification. It's like, hey, here's your replacement, and reach out to them to resell them again. Um, Another one would be is like, I mean, I think you do the same as you would doing outbound. You just kind of reverse it in a sense, as in, track if they have job openings in like domain you are basically in. If they get funding, like analyze the funding and see if they mention anything that's related to your product and reach out to them about it or whatever. News articles, all this stuff. Just know what's going on in their world and trigger like, track those signals, get them in, analyze them, and act on them.
Yeah. And there again, like the external signals that you would be tracking. Anything specific to, like, for example, product usage or adoption that you would consider as
Um,
well?
I mean, to be like, I haven't gone like very very deep in like that side of it. I
Mhm.
want to though. But like for sure, like do track it and like see if usage goes down and all that stuff and like get notified and but yeah, for like right now, like the most of the motions I've been setting up or engineering to stay on brand have been kind of focused on external data and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean that
Then
but like mostly I guess, yeah.
it always depends,
Yeah.
but that's not what people want to hear. Like, that makes too much sense, Lawrence, if you say it
Yeah.
depends. I think a nice addition that not a lot of people think about when it comes to champion tracking is tracking the blocker. So if you have like a closed lost deal
Mhm.
that was blocked by a certain person, when that person leaves, you can basically re-engage
Yeah.
that opportunity to, like, see if you could get them on board. Because if you have something like an ongoing win-loss analysis and you've identified what it is that went into the loss, then once your blocker disappears, you can try to re-engage, and then hopefully you have learned from why you have lost the deal. And if you're able to basically tackle those basically decision drivers
Mhm.
that have resulted in you not winning the deal, that hopefully can actually then improve your chances because you've already built the relationship. You've already hopefully have like multi-threaded within the organization. And then when the blocker leaves, you can actually then also re-engage.
Yeah. I mean that's a
Oh,
good
that's
point,
like a,
yeah.
yeah, instead of like champion tracking, blocker tracking as
Yeah.
well.
I'm
That's
gonna
also,
because I'm gonna add that to my list of like, I mean,
yeah.
like low hanging fruit. Like an example of it is just like tracking website visitors. That's also a common one
Yeah.
that a lot of
Yeah.
companies are doing. Is like because open tracking, it's still done, but it's not very reliable. Like Apple Mail kind of blocks it already. Google seems to want to block it, so I'm not sure how reliable that still is. Just track websites like visitors and like both in relation to your outbound, right? Like we're targeting this company, and if they visit our website, that's usually a good case. You can also track, of course, like clicking in your email, but I'm not the I mean, it depends, like always, but I'm not the biggest fan of adding URLs in your emails if you're doing outbound, just because the chances of going
Nah.
in spam are a bit higher, unless you work for like Salesforce or whatever, because like Google knows the domain, and it's not a shady URL. But if you're a smaller company, just don't do it. Um, but yeah, track your website visitors and get notified if someone you're doing outbound to visits your websites. Like kind of start showing intent, and
No.
also just sort of the inbound let outbound motion. If someone visits your website, check if it's an ICP and check if you should be doing outreach to them.
Yeah, that's of course where automation
Exactly.
can really help you. Okay, so we're looking at like the process. Okay, so once you've identified constraint in your current state with the MVP tech stack, we know what it is and what you can do to get like to the deeper levels of personalization. Maybe you can even set up the micro campaigns based on the ideal customer situation. There are different ways in which you can then like leverage this. There are low hanging fruits. There are like certain signals that you can easily look for and act on. So basically, yeah, like some of the use cases that you can use automation for in your outbound would be then like the engagement, the research, re-engagement, um, like checking for ICP, which is probably some of the research things that you've mentioned. What would be some of the other like use cases that I have maybe missed here, or that you would like to add to this?
And it's just like low hanging fruit wise. Usually, like most sales reps probably do this when they close a deal, they kind of look for similar companies to outreach to them. And it can be competitors or just like companies that are very, very similar. Automated, like as soon as a deal gets to closed, like you can, send a webhook to Clay and it looks for lookalike companies and you can do outreach to the lookalike companies as well. That's usually pretty low hanging fruit. Like website visitors is usually, I mean, if you're not tracking website visitors, like track it. Like it's so easy to set up. It's so cheap to set up as well. Like you have tools like Lead Info.
Yeah.
I forgot their pricing, but it's not a lot.
Yeah, there are a lot of
I mean, Apollo does it
tracking
as well now.
tools that have like yeah, they have like a free tier, and it tracks like up to a certain amount of visitors and saves it for like a week or whatever.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
like, I like it's 2024. Track your website visitors. Like just do it. It's not hard.
So it's on my to-do list. It's on my to-do list.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, track your champions. What else is like very low hanging fruit? Like you can also add in like LinkedIn engagement and all the stuff with tools like Common Room is a common one. But that again, like then it gets like depends because if you're not really using LinkedIn, then it doesn't matter. And LinkedIn, like don't send the like it's an outbound I get very often. It's like, hey, I saw you like this post from like someone else. Do you want to buy my product? It's like a like is not a very good proxy. Like don't use it. Use it maybe on your own post as like to gauge kind of
Mhm.
how
Hey, thanks for liking.
yeah
Like, love to connect.
start a
Like,
conversation.
what did you like about the post? Yeah.
Yeah, but don't do like cold
Oh yeah.
outbound based on hey, you like this random post from 2 weeks ago. Like, because first of all, I don't know which post are.
I don't
Yeah,
remember.
I don't have like zero clue. And also like, why does it matter? Like,
Well, I think this again ties back into like the volume versus quality question. Like, okay, so you can basically, if you have a list of people that you're tracking and you basically reach out to every person that's within your ICP that likes their posts, like that's could be a smart automation. But then like you're trying to amp up volume, but you're not looking at the quality
mhm,
because you're again sticking to like the surface level personalization instead of going deeper. And you think that you go deep because you ask about what it is that you liked from the post, but that's not like deep personalization. Like if you were to do this in like a deep way, then you would basically read the post, see what it's about, tie that back to the stuff that the person might be working on, to how this could affect their business. And then if it ties back to what you can do, like then you create like a more of like a point of view on like, hey, like I saw that you liked Lawrence's post about how you can like set up your champion tracking um, by I don't know
yeah,
uh, in Clay and set up like a micro campaign to reach out to them. And I saw that you like work on win-loss analysis in my case. Like I'm curious, like has this ever been like an issue for you that you were unable to like track a champion? If so, like could be worth having like a small chat, or that's already like very pushy towards a sale. But then just leave it there. Like, hey, I'm curious. Like, has this ever been something that you've encountered during like a win-loss program that you've run?
yeah,
And then that could be like a good opening question
yeah,
that is tying like the fact that I liked one of your posts about champion tracking. And then, hey, like I see that you do win loss, where you're basically seeing the influence of different things on a deal result. And then you can tie those things back together. Then you've actually created a deeper personalized outreach,
yeah.
which if somebody uses this after posting this call or this podcast, then yes, I will have a conversation with you.
It's dangerous to
Like,
say or to throw out there.
I don't care.
Okay.
It's okay. Like I'm always open for conversations because if this is the way that you do sales,
Mhm.
then I'm I'm happy to have like a chat with you. And if they don't, this probably also means that they're losing winnable deals
Yeah,
or not getting the amount of revenue in that they could be having.
yeah,
So there's like an opportunity for me to hopefully help them out.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm always open to listen to people.
One thing I would probably add too is like, um, I mean, most sales managers are so focused on like volume metrics, that like the solution to almost every problem
Yeah.
is just send more, do more. Or they call outbound
Yeah,
bad, dead because like, oh, we tried outbound, it's like, nah, it's dead, like doesn't work. But at the same time, like other companies are making money of it, so it's probably not dead. Like you're
yeah,
just not good enough at it. And I think that's like a lot of companies kind of, I mean, it's way more comfortable to call the motion that than to admit that you might not be
yeah,
very good at it. Um, and I think like from there, you need to kind of look like, is it our offer? Is it our email copy? I mean, are we just getting in the spam? Are we actually like reaching the prospects? Are we targeting the wrong
yeah,
prospects? Um, like basically what I'm saying is like, if a motion isn't working, don't assume the motion is dead. Like kind of like look at it like, what are the different
yeah,
aspects of the motion, and which of them, like make an hypothesis, like which of one do, like which of these things, like we have copy, we have targeting, we have offer, we have email infrastructure, like which of these things do we think is wrong, and then like change it, test
yeah,
it for 2 weeks, and then be like, either it changed or it didn't, and maybe you were wrong, maybe you were right,
yeah.
and then change it again, and until it works. That's, I think, to most of your problems, that's probably the way to go about solving them.
Yeah, 100%. Like this is also what we see. Like the data will tell you what has happened, but it doesn't tell you why it
Mhm.
is happening. And that's when you need to go deeper.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not
And that's
it's dead,
where,
basically.
no, it's more often than not, it's like something that can either be a quick fix, for example, with the DNS settings
Mhm.
for deliverability, or if you have, there are certain like rules, I wouldn't say, but they're like best practices when it comes to like doing certain things
Yeah.
in every stage of the customer journey. Because yeah, there are just certain like truths when it comes to like buying things.
Mhm.
Like people would love to buy, they don't like to be sold to. If they assume that it's a high risk investment, they need to be like assured that you have like the right authority. So there's like a lot of different aspects that go into this, but that doesn't mean that that you like see a low conversion rate from something in like a certain step of your customer journey or in like the Bowtie model, that like the thing that you're doing is just not working. The way that you do it might not be working, but that doesn't mean that the thing itself
Yeah.
is not.
Yeah.
Like it's not the channel, it's the way that you use it. It's not,
Yeah. Yeah.
like they say, like it's not the size of the boat, but the motion and the ocean,
Yeah, exactly.
something like this.
Yeah, and even to the, like, I think a lot of companies are also kind of assume like, hey, our competitors are doing like these 3 channels. Doesn't mean
Hmm.
like you have to use those 3 as well. Like be bold and like try different stuff. Like just because somebody else isn't doing it doesn't mean it doesn't work. Like try for yourself, like test it and see if it actually works. Because if they're not doing a channel that actually works, like it might be like a like huge competitive advantage. Just figure out the channel and use it. Um, yeah,
There's like, but that's also like, again, the thing when you're doing the experiments.
yeah,
So you're trying a different channel that none of your competitors are using and you're not seeing the results. Then is it the channel or is it the way that you approach the channel? So again,
yeah, yeah. Experiment and like don't expect results at day
yeah,
one. Like it's like like if you're doing something that like you've never done before, like nobody in the industry has done it before, like don't try it for a day. Like give it like an actual chance to succeed as well. Like figure out how the channel works, like test something and then like test a few things before you give up on it. Like sure, like if like
yeah,
you try it for I don't know how long, depends on the channel as well, but like if you try it for like 6 months and like you get zero results, then sure, like give up on it. It's probably not the best channel for your industry, but
Yeah.
like give it a good shot.
What I like the advice of, I forgot the name. It could be someone like an Alex Hormozy or something like that. They put out a lot of stuff where he does. And then it's like if you're trying to do something like new, like go to somebody that has made it successfully work for them and then just learn from them as well.
Yeah.
So for example, instead of only going to LinkedIn and SEO whatsoever, like certain people are very skilled at using something like Reddit, for example. Like go talk to businesses that have used Reddit successfully. And if they're not like a direct competitor, like you probably should be able to like learn from them. Or at least you can see what it is that they do that is making it work for them. You can try to replicate this. So you're already into like a certain direction. And then if it's really, really working, then you can add scale to it. And
Exactly.
that's where you come in. And then you can like really push it to the limits.
Yeah.
And then probably if it's becoming really successful, then eventually it will stop being successful because everybody then is going to do it. And then you have to find something else. And then you need to talk to Lawrence again because if you find something else, you can scale that.
Yeah. Exactly.
That's how you're never run out of work.
Yeah. Just talk to me. There's a solution.
Yeah, that's always the
Yeah.
solution, I guess. No, but I really like the process that you've identified here, Lawrence. So it's like that. So first off, like if it's something that is already working for you, but you just need to automate it, like go to Lawrence, he'll automate it for you. If this is something like, hey, we want to be able to do things better, like we go through like this research phase where we're looking into like your current state. What is it that you're doing? How does your tech stack look like? And what are the constraints? Then based on the constraints, you're going to do some research again. You're setting up like an hypothesis because it could be many different things that go into why things aren't converting.
Hmm.
And then basically, once you've identified this, you've been able to then let it work. You can add scale to this. And like there are systems that will definitely help you do this in a cost effective way that is allowing you to become very successful. Like it's not a guarantee for success, but it will set you up to become more successful. With the example of like deep personalization and relevance, that is maybe even done based on micro campaigns on your ideal customer situation. And then, well, I think that would basically like sum it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe like the last thing to add to it is like every time you find a constraint, and it's like in three parts, it's like, can we just add more volume? Can we make it faster? Or can we do it better? And then just, figure out which one and do it.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I think that would basically like wrap things up. So if there are founders listening to this and they are like, I need to like add more to what we're doing because we've already found like a winning solution, we think, but we would like to like take it to the next level. Like, what is it that they can do to come in contact with
Yeah.
you about it?
I mean, just add me on LinkedIn. I mean, I'm very active there, just like Lawrence and then NYS. I don't know how you pronounce that in English. Like it's just Nes in Dutch for any of the Dutchies listening. Or like type in go to market engineer in LinkedIn. There aren't many of them yet, so I'm assuming I'll be one of the first that pops up.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Laurens, for sharing your story and letting me pick your brain on what goes into like scaling efficiently and effectively by putting quality over quantity and service level personalization into like deep personalization. I really liked the fact that like you're setting up like these micro campaigns where we're taking like different things and adding them together based on like our value proposition and the problems that we solve. And one thing from like the beginning of the conversation, which has not been something that I've thought about, but that each tool comes with like a methodology, like a modus operandi, basically, on how you're going to work. And if that is like you use many different systems, you have like many different methodologies and ways to operate. And so like make a choice in that as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks. And for everybody that is still listening, I'm going to make sure that you're able to find Lawrence in the show notes and definitely hit him up because automation and AI, as many are predicting, will be the future of like scaling your go-to-market more effectively. And I think Lawrence is well on his way to helping a lot of businesses out in doing so.
Awesome.
Lawrence, thank again. And everybody, till the next episode. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you.